want to report to you today on the most unique and amazing ruler ever invited to Washington as the official guest of the president. He's a man who owns more oil than anyone else in the world. He probably owns more wives and concubines than anyone else, who has about as many Cadillacs as there are miles of paved road in his kingdom, and who rules over one of the few countries where slavery still exists. He's King Saud II of Saudi Arabia. King Saud is an extremely tall Arab, 6 feet 6 inches, wears a mustache, a goatee, eyeglasses, a light yellow coat, and brown suede shoes. He's 55 years old, has 40 sons, and is bringing one of them, 5-year-old Prince Mansour, to see if American doctors can help his crippled hand. The American Air Force is one of its important bases at Dahran in Saudi Arabia, and the king has been very much interested in American air maneuvers and American air power. However, he has not renewed the lease on this base, and this is one point President Eisenhower wants to talk to him about. King Saud, like most Muslims, is a teetotaler. He doesn't smoke. Also, he's bringing no wives to the United States. One of his courtiers explained, there are beautiful women in America. In Saudi Arabia, most women are veiled. Their faces are not seen in public. But the king has seen unveiled women before, as at a reception in his honor in Iran. This, incidentally, is a very rare photo. Immediately after it was taken, an official order was issued banning photos of King Saud with unveiled women. The king is bringing 66 retainers, ministers, and counselors to Washington. When he travels, he really does things right. He once gave a tip of $80,000 plus 2 Cadillacs plus a Chevrolet to the servants who took care of him on a visit to Iran. There are only 200 miles of paved road in Saudi Arabia, but the country has 250 Cadillacs. When the king travels in Saudi Arabia, he travels in a Cadillac, but surrounded by tribal warriors mounted on Arabian horses. They guard him on all visits of state. Most other people, however, travel on foot or on the desert beast of burden, the lowly camel. Here's a camel caravan heading out across the desert. It's a strange country, a unique country, and an extremely important country to the United States. In just a minute, I'll tell you more about it. As important as Saudi Arabia is to the United States, it's even more important to the Muslim world for reasons which the average American may not readily appreciate. For in Saudi Arabia is located the famed city of Mecca, which every good Mohammedan seeks to visit before he dies to ensure a place in heaven. Thousands of Muslim pilgrims come here every year. Here they jam the courtyard of the great mosque of Mecca around the Kaaba, the black stone draped with a cloth in the center, which reputedly is the house of Allah, once also the house of Abraham. To the left of the black Kaaba is the well of Zamzam, dug by the angel Gabriel to save Hagar and Ishmael, concubine and son of Abraham, when they were dying of thirst in the desert. It was Ishmael who founded the Muslim faith, Isaac, another son of Abraham, who founded the Jewish faith. For 2,000 years, these pilgrims have brought wealth to Saudi Arabia, but suddenly and quite recently, wealth such as no Muslim ever dreamed began gushing out of the barren sand, black gold, making it the richest nation in the Near East. Overnight, the American oil companies that developed this wealth began to transform Saudi Arabia into a modern oil field. Overnight, a network of pipes, pumps, refineries sprang up in the desert. Modern truck caravans with air-conditioned trailers serving as offices for American oil men explored the desert for more oil. In their wake, huge pipelines crossed the desert, carrying oil from Saudi Arabia through Syria, Lebanon, to the Mediterranean. Pipelines which were partly cut off by the Arabs during the attack on Suez. In the wake of the oil explorers also have come new and modern schools built for the Arabian American Oil Company for the children of its American employees. But few schools have been built for Arab children. Arab labor has been taught to handle the delicate job of oil drills and oil tools, but they've not been educated. Illiteracy in Saudi Arabia remains 99%. Less than 1% of the people can read and write. Thus, Saudi Arabia presents a grave problem to the United States. With 70% of the world's oil reserves here or in neighboring countries, we cannot afford to let this vast wealth fall into the hands of Soviet Russia. Yet the ignorance of the population, their fanaticism, the failure of King Saud to improve the welfare of his people, makes it a ripe field for communism. when any population is heavily tubercular or 40% venereal, or with 70% suffering from trachoma. It's just what Moscow wants. Unfortunately, the king has established only 10 primary schools in his entire nation of 7 million people, and only 2 high schools. Yet his revenue from the Arabian American Oil Company is about $300 million a year. Of this, a large portion goes for the upkeep of his own royal household, which, with servants, concubines, guards, and royal retainers, totals about 10,000 people. This is the entrance to the desert city of Riyadh, where the king lives. He has 24 palaces, the most important being at Riyadh. He spends $36 million for defense, though his country is surrounded by friendly Arab nations. He spends another $24 million for what is called internal security, payments to tribesmen to maintain their friendship and loyalty. Another $1 million goes for what is called general development, chiefly air conditioning of palaces and building of swimming pools. But only $10,700,000 goes to public health, education, and social services all combined. So while the king is anxious to combat communism, and President Eisenhower has invited him to Washington to help combat communism, nevertheless, Saudi Arabia's poverty-stricken masses present a dangerous potential for communism right at home. Now here's another problem that plays into the hands of Moscow. I have here an official report of the United Nations showing that Saudi Arabia is one of the few countries in the world where slavery still flourishes. Behind these walls and parapets, about 500,000 slaves are held in the country ruled by King Saud, 5% of the population. Most of these slaves are Negroes recruited in Africa. Arab slave traders drive their trucks all the way over to French equatorial Africa. In some cases, trade slaves for rifles or bayonets. In other cases, persuade African Muslims to come on a free trip to Mecca, thereby ensuring a place for themselves in heaven. The Negroes climb happily aboard the trucks, only to be arrested in Saudi Arabia later for illegal entry and sold in the slave market. A female Negro under 15 will sometimes bring between $570 up to $1,140. A healthy male will bring about $430. Now here is the only picture I know of an Arabian slave market. It's not a very good picture, but the Saudi Arabian government has been very careful not to let these pictures out of the country. Women slaves are seated on the right. Young boy slaves are in the center. And those standing are prospective buyers. This auction did not bring very good prices. A few unwanted slaves left over at the end brought 75 cents each. Now here are 2 very shocking facts. First, slavery has increased recently as a result of the huge oil royalties paid to Saudi Arabia. They can afford to buy more slaves. Second, the United States has tacitly appeared to stand with Saudi Arabia in regard to slavery. This is a shocking, almost unbelievable thing to report. However, here is an official United Nations report giving the debate when the UN adopted that treaty to outlaw slavery. It shows that the American delegate, Walter Kotchin, made a lot of equivocating statements, but actually in the end refused to sign the treaty abolishing slavery. He represented a country which took such a firm stand against slavery that we fought an almost suicidal civil war. Yet last September, the Eisenhower administration refused to sign a treaty outlawing slavery. Russia signed it, Red China signed it, all the important nations of the world signed, except the United States and 5 Arab states. A previous Republican administration under Calvin Coolidge in 1926 had signed such a treaty, but in 1956 the Eisenhower administration refused. Why? Why did we refuse to take a stand on such an important and clear-cut moral issue? Well, one reason: oil. Oil and our desire to curry favor with King Saud of Saudi Arabia. In a minute, I'll make a prediction regarding the King's conferences with President Eisenhower. Now, regarding the very important conference between Eisenhower and King Saud, I predict that Ike will make some headway in persuading the king to become a new Arab leader rivaling Colonel Nasser and friendly to the West. There was a time when Colonel Nasser and King Saud were good friends. Also, Secretary Dulles has vigorously defended Nasser in the past, but he's now become the best friend of Russia in the Near East and the worst friend of the United States. Today, Saud is somewhat cool toward Nasser because he dislikes Russia and because the closing of the Suez Canal has cut Saud's oil revenue in half. I also predict Saud will ask for and get American technicians to modernize his army against what enemy? Unless it's Israel, nobody knows, but I predict he'll get them. I predict he'll get rolling stock for his toy desert railroad and an American gift of new jet planes. Finally, I predict he'll get a new American-built university. But how this university will be of any value with only 10 primary schools and 2 high schools in all of Saudi Arabia, I'm not predicting. Finally, I regretfully predict no steps will be taken to wipe out the real danger of communism, the poverty of the Arabian people. I'll have a final word in just a minute. Next week, I'll take you into the cloakrooms of Congress and report on what senators do when they are not making speeches.